All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to my channel and podcast. I'm Rosanna, your holistic wellness consultant, where I provide you tools and strategies for balanced aging in the areas of physical, emotional, and cognitive health. And today I have with me Dr. Celia. And before we get into the podcast, I just want to introduce you to Dr. Celia. So I'm just going to read a little introduction for her. So, Dr. Celia is an entrepreneur, functional health practitioner, and chiropractor whose mission is to guide women to help balance their brain and their business. With a wealth of academic knowledge and personal experience, Dr. Celia is driven by a mission to extend health healing globally. Central to her approach are the three pillars: physical, chemical, and emotional well-being, each essential for holistic healing, bringing your business to new heights and activating your best quality of life. Welcome, Dr. Celia.
Hi, Rose. Thanks so much for
Hi.
having me.
No worries. Yeah, it's great to have you. I'm so happy, that we're going to talk, you and I, and the audience is going to listen about the brain, and in
Yes.
particular, the right and left hemispheres, and
Yep.
the importance that each one plays in our cognitive health.
hmm
And, we hear a lot about the left side and the right side, and the theory that one is more dominant and that that determines your characteristics and the way one functions. But I want you to tell us if that theory is correct. I heard that it's not, but anyway. So how does the brain function in terms of the right hemisphere compared to the left hemisphere?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of, I guess you could say, stereotyping when it comes to the brain.
Mhm.
People think that the right side is about creativity, imagination, and the left side is all about math, science, logic. And those are true, but I would say it kind of just stops there because there's a lot more to the brain that we don't know and we haven't associated with the left and the right hemispheres. So I'm going to bring it all the way back to when we were in utero and each of us were growing inside of the womb.
Okay.
And essentially, what's happening is as our nervous system is developing, only the right side of our brain is starting to develop. We're born with both sides of our brain,
Mhm.
but only the right side is the one that is actually working.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's why when you have a baby or when you were even a baby, if I were to read a baby a story, like for example, a Harry Potter novel,
Mhm.
they wouldn't understand what's going on. But if I were to start clapping and making funny noises and sounds, they would understand what's going on. And that's because the right side of the brain is very much into looking at the whole picture as and is very interactive with the outside world. But we can also call this side, the right side, our subconscious mind, because babies are very much subconscious. They don't have that conscious element to them yet.
Okay.
But at the age of 2, when babies they start to become toddlers and they start to develop a little bit more, they start to have more left side interaction and the two hemispheres start to talk to each other.
Mm.
And that's why it's called the terrible twos because
Oh,
you're putting all of that visual with now
right.
all of this analytical, logical. They start asking questions, they start throwing temper tantrums because
Right.
now it's like, wait, what's going on? Why do I question everything in the world? Why can't we just make funny faces all day? Right.
Right.
So those two sides of the brain start to talk at the age of 2. And then throughout development, they continue to grow together.
Mhm.
However, due to our educational system of sitting at a desk and absorbing facts all day, or then even when we go into the workforce and we're just being very analytical with our
Mhm.
job,
Mhm.
the left brain starts to receive more nourishment. And we tend to nurture more of the IQ logical brain, and
Mhm.
we tend not to nurture that emotional subconscious type brain on the right side anymore. And that can become a bit of a problem because if we start to go too much in our left brain, that's when we enter a state of dis-ease. Because the right
Ah,
side is the master and the left side is the associate. But then it gets to the point where the left side's trying to become the master and it's doing everything wrong, I guess you can
okay.
say, or it's getting too analytical. And
Right.
then we start to see all these imbalances in the body like people having acid reflux. There could be even blockages like cancer or immune dysregulation.
Hmm.
And then it's like, but why is this happening? And
Right.
it's all starting in the brain.
Wow. And so when you talk about disease, it's any type of disease, that.
Essentially. So
Yeah.
there's actually a really quite interesting phenomenon when it comes to men and women. We start to see more specific diseases as per the biological gender or the
Hmm.
biological sex of that individual. Men will usually have diseases in movement. So they will be the ones that have Parkinson's, dyskinesis, motor control imbalances.
Hmm.
They probably will use a cane or a walker. And I actually saw that with my own grandfather who had Parkinson's.
Right.
And
Yeah.
yeah.
Remember.
And then in women, they'll usually get Alzheimer's, dementia. A big one is multiple sclerosis, MS, personality disorders. So they're
Hmm.
more the personality type diseases that we see in women. That's not to say that men and women can't have each
Each
other's own
other's
ailments, but
right.
it's more
Yeah.
common in those sexes.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah.
Wow. So it could be either emotional or physical,
Yeah,
the ailment, right? Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah.
And so how can we improve this? Like, how do we, first of all, how do we get to that point? And I know that you're saying the education system, the work, but how do we actually get to that point, and how can we maybe, I don't know, try to improve that performance?
Absolutely. So we get there actually as soon as we're born, there's beliefs that we start to adopt. And a child's belief system usually gets established around the age of 7. So
Hmm.
although they're nonverbal for the first, couple years of their, not couple years, but the first year at least of their life,
Yeah.
they're still absorbing everything. They're still understanding what you're saying, even though they can't tell you, like, no, mom, you're beautiful, or no, dad, you're working hard enough. But
Hmm.
they're listening to all of those conversations, and those
Right.
belief patterns are starting to get etched into their minds and
Yes.
into their subconscious. So, one way that we can start is just encouraging your children, talking positively to them, giving good example, good belief patterns to set
Hmm.
in from a very early age. But it is possible to also change your belief patterns.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
yeah. And so I usually tell my clients that I work with, because a lot of the times when we have a blockage, either in health or business, there is some negative self-talk going on, which is the left side of the brain. That left side of the brain is saying, I'm not good enough. Oh my gosh, they're
Right.
doing a better job than I am. I'll never get to where I want to be. That's left side. That's
Right.
just them making up a story.
That
So
inner
you,
critic. Yeah.
yeah, it's your inner critic. And so really cancel those thoughts. Just acknowledge that they're there and be like, hey, that's not true.
Right.
I'm beautiful. I'm worthy. I like all those beautiful affirmations. And Louise Hay is like the queen of affirmations. So I
Yes.
love reading her books
Yes.
for that
Yeah.
reason. But all of those affirmations that are so difficult to say to
Hmm.
yourself because it feels like there's this ick in the body of
Right.
like, I don't believe what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That's how we nurture the right side of the brain. But then
Okay.
even exercise, eating whole foods, spending quality time with, family and friends that give us energy, that's
Hmm.
all nourishing the right side of the brain.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
And yeah, I tell my clients, when they have that critical thought, is to question it. Is it true? Ask yourself, is
Yes.
it true? And
Yeah.
most likely you won't, it's not true, and you won't find the evidence that it is true. So yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. But yeah, and I really like the way, everything comes together. So your exercise, the what you eat, and relationships. So it's having all those things as part of your life, and just integrating those things.
Yeah. My
Yeah.
3 pillars are physical, chemical, and emotional for that
Hmm.
exact reason. Because being a chiropractor in school, all you're learning about is adjusting, and you're learning about the physical ailments of the body that you're trying to help with the
Yeah.
body in order to bring them to a better state of ease.
Hmm.
But they teach a little bit of nutrition, they teach all those things, but it's really when you're in clinical practice that you
Hmm.
put all this together and you start seeing things happen.
Right.
And I got to that point in my practice where I was adjusting, I was treating, doing all the physical, giving my patients exercises, telling them what they need to do. But
Hmm.
then everyone kind of hit a plateau and everyone just like kind of leveled off. And they're like, hey, what more can I do? And I'm like, well, how's your diet? How's your sleep? How do you
Right.
manage stress? Do you love your job? Do you have a supportive relationship at home? And it took a lot of understanding from my end, a lot of courses in
Yeah.
addition to
Yeah.
chiropractic school to get there, because healing the body in only one of those pillars, whether it be physical, chemical, or emotional,
Hmm.
it's not complete. So that's why having all three of those pillars in a nice balance
Hmm.
and really, spending time on each one, even a little bit each day,
Right.
will help balance the brain. And then you will do better in your business or in your, family life or relationship life.
Yeah,
Mhm.
definitely. Yeah. And consistency each day, like
Yes.
yeah, doing it even just for a little bit.
Yeah.
I always say it's better to do 5 minutes of meditation every day instead of, an hour once a week or once a
Yeah.
month, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And
I
so,
usually, yeah.
yeah, no, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I usually tell my clients just start small.
Yes,
If you can only afford to do 2 to 5 minutes of meditation a day, or if you can only afford to make breakfast your most beautiful meal of the day, just start there, because
right.
the brain doesn't like to be stressed out. Because
That's
then again, we start going into left brain so
yeah.
much. So just start small and gradually add in an extra minute or an extra food or an extra practice or anything
Mhm.
like that to get you going to where you want to be.
Yeah, yeah. Because I mean, I think part of the reason as well is that we just feel overwhelmed. We can't have too
Yeah.
much change all at once. So,
Yeah.
like you said, start small and then gradually build in the other changes. Yeah. So you were
Absolutely.
talking about your chiropractic practice. So, how does it affect the brain?
Yeah.
Chiropractor adjustments.
Yeah. So this is actually something so interesting that I came across a couple years ago, where we all have this idea that chiropractic adjustments, back cracking, we're just
Hmm.
trying to resolve low back pain or neck pain, or someone that's had like a motor vehicle accident, which absolutely that
Yeah.
biomechanical enhancement does exist.
Hmm.
But there's actually been research to show that when adjusting the cervical spine, which is the neck area,
Hmm.
it can actually illuminate the prefrontal cortex of the brain for up to a week. And why this is huge and why this is so exciting is because our prefrontal cortex is what makes us human. This is where all of our decision making, our personality, our judgment, even language, like how we speak,
Right.
motor control,
Yeah.
this is where that resides in the brain. And so, if we get a spinal adjustment, if you go see your chiropractor and you are getting neck adjustments or you are just getting adjustments in general, you are activating that prefrontal cortex and you are becoming a better human.
Wow.
And now, yeah. And now, even for myself, I have a disc herniation in my neck from
Mhm.
a prior injury.
Mhm.
But now I go for my mental health to get an adjustment. I definitely feel the benefits, but I feel clear minded. I feel like, okay, I can tackle the day, I can get my tasks done.
Right. Yeah. And
Yeah.
like you said, it makes us, I think because I was listening to another podcast and she was talking about how the frontal lobe, it allows us to respond in a positive way. So when
Yeah.
we respond and it's like flipping your lid, I think she referred it to. If
Okay.
we flip our lid, that means that something's not right. It's not, you're not thinking properly. You're letting stress get in the way
Yeah.
of your actual response. So I like that you said, it makes us better people because that's what it's all about. And yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I love
The
that.
deeper you go in the brain, the more primitive it is. That's why the brain, up until the age of 25, that's when it's fully developed.
Right.
So a teenager, 19, 18, like they think they have it all figured out, but they
Yeah.
have a few years to go before it's all figured out. And
Right.
that's why it's still so important to nurture the brain through positive interaction, through
Mm.
good eating, through exercise, because at the age of 25, it does stop developing, but that doesn't mean that our neurological patterns are rigid and they stay
Right.
like that. There's something called neuroplasticity, which
Uh-huh.
is basically this phenomenon where the brain is plastic and we can mold it. And
Ah,
we can form new connections in the brain, just how we can change our belief patterns. That would
right.
be a form of neuroplasticity.
Right.
But what ends up happening, especially when all these negative thoughts start coming into our mind or flipping the lid when we're having our positive, negative emotions,
Mhm.
we get into the limbic system of our brain, and that's our very animal brain.
Mm.
And there's a region called the amygdala. And the amygdala is basically, if this is not something I need for survival, I'm out. And it talks to
Right.
itself in a more negative way.
Right.
And so that's why it's very common when you're in a very high state of stress
Hmm.
that your amygdala is firing and telling you, you're not good enough. You're not good enough. Stop doing this. We don't like this. And then in combination with the conscious of the ego and things like that.
Hmm. It's
Yeah.
always easier to think negative than it is
Yeah.
to think positive, right?
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
the amygdala. Yeah. And the left side of the brain,
At the
right?
left side. Yeah.
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 Yeah. I mean, the brain is so complicated. It's
Oh
just
my gosh.
yeah.
It's so, you know what? My first neuro class that I took in my undergrad, I was studying kinesiology at York
Mhm.
because I've always had such a desire and such a passion to learn more about the body.
Yeah.
And the first neuro class that I took, I was like, what is going on inside of this area
Yeah.
of our head? Like, what is, and it's still a mystery to
It,
this day.
I was gonna say, yeah, I bet.
Yeah, it's amazing. Like, and all of the things that are going on with the research, especially with Dr. Joe Dispenza in
Mhm.
understanding the conscious, the subconscious, and putting a tangible, objective aspect to it is
Yes.
amazing. But then
Yeah.
also just the function and the physiology is really, really awesome.
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
So are there supplements that we can take or one can
Mhm.
take to kind of heal that brain function or make our brains function better?
Yeah. Absolutely. So the brain, again, just in its beautiful magic, it actually has a blood-brain barrier. So it's not that everything you take goes to your brain. It has to be very specific and
Mhm.
pass through the gates of this barrier in order to be accepted and taken in by the brain. But one of those things is omegas. So omega 3s,
Mhm.
they can pass through blood-brain barrier and they actually help with making the brain fatty and keeping the white and gray matter, if you've ever heard of those
Yes, yeah, I've
before,
heard that. Yeah.
nice and plush and nice and abundant.
Hmm.
Another one is vitamin B12 as well.
Hmm.
It goes along with the entire nervous system, actually, in that it helps to keep the fatty coating around the nerve cell. So your messages can continuously jump and go from the beginning to the end destination in record time. Because that's what multiple sclerosis is when we don't have that fatty layer and then
Okay.
the signal slowly starts to die and it doesn't get to the end destination.
Mhm.
But B12 helps to keep that fatty coating
Okay.
around.
Okay.
So those are two. Yeah.
So you would recommend those two as your top two? Yeah. Or
And magnesium.
and magnesium.
Yeah,
Okay.
magnesium is involved in, I think, over like 100 reactions in the body. Now, there's different types of magnesium, so it can get a little complicated. I
Mm.
usually recommend magnesium bisglycinate if you don't have a genetic mutation,
Okay.
or magnesium malate if you do have a genetic mutation, like myself.
Okay.
So your body doesn't just go crazy and it can't handle that glycine component to the
Mhm.
supplement. But
Okay.
magnesium is amazing with producing energy and keeping your nervous system just on track.
Okay. So I want to talk about the genetic topic in a minute, but I
Yeah.
want to go back because you talked about or you mentioned the gray matter and the white matter,
Hmm.
and I've heard of that term. So do you want to just explain it for our audience a little bit in
Yeah.
quick terms, or
Yeah.
if it can
Yeah,
be?
of course, of course. So, gray matter and white matter is basically what makes up our brain. If you were to look at it under a microscope, you would see some areas are white and some areas are gray. But what that essentially means in a more microscopic level is that the nerves or those cells within the nervous system, some of them have that fatty coating around them, and then some of them don't. The ones that have that fatty coating around them, that's what we call the white matter. And the ones that don't have the fatty coating, that's what we call the gray matter.
Got
And it's very common when we see, people with dementia or Alzheimer's and things like that, we
it.
start to see the gray matter start to, leave the
Mm.
body or get
Mhm.
eaten up, you could say, because for some reason the body's attacking itself. And that gray matter starts to leave. And that's what we don't want because we can't get back gray matter because that
Okay.
fat around your nervous system and around your cells helps in the development and the formation of new neurons and that neuroplasticity, things like that. So you want to keep both matters around, but gray matter a little longer.
Yeah, yeah. So in this case, fatty matter or fatty coating is good for us. Whereas,
Absolutely. Yeah. That's why eating
okay.
essential fats,
Yeah,
it's not just for, the hormone production and having good cholesterol levels in the body. It's also for your nervous system.
right, right.
Yeah.
And so, when we talk about the brain and all this, the matter, like the grain, the white and the fatty coating, and taking these supplements to have a healthy brain, I always I mean, when you're in your 20s, you don't think about things like that. So,
No.
for me, it's never too early to start taking care of yourself and being proactive and preventative. So, what is your magic age when, one should begin these things?
You know what? I've been doing all this health kick stuff since the age of, I want to say like 13.
Wow.
I've been doing it for a while.
Yeah,
But you know what? I would say there isn't really a magic age because your body is so resilient. And at the end of the day, your body just truly wants to be healthy. The
right,
thing, though, is your consciousness, your ego. When you ever ask somebody, what do you really want in life? They're like, ooh, I would love a car. I would love to go on
right.
vacations. I
Yeah.
would love to have, all of these possessions. No one ever really wants to be healthy. But
Hmm.
when you're sick, you
Yeah.
want to be healthy because
Yes.
you realize you can't have all of these beautiful possessions and live life without your health.
Right.
So it's never too late to get started. But the older you are, I find you have to have a little bit more of that permission and a little bit more of that grace to just start small. Because when we're adults, there's a lot more going on. There's more people we have to think about if you have a family, your job, yourself, your social
Absolutely.
connections.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
just start really small and give yourself permission to make a mistake because then you
Hmm.
can learn from it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I think I started in my 40s where I realized that life, yeah, if I don't have my health, I won't have
Yeah.
anything else. But
Yeah.
what a great way to, if I know we're all busy, like, we all go through stages, right? So
Yeah.
there was a stage where I had the young kids, but wouldn't it be great to just incorporate it into the family routine, right?
Yeah.
Not say, oh, it's just me that I have to take care of myself, but you know, promote it with the kids as well so that they grow up, you know, doing these things
Healthy.
as well. Yeah, and being
Yeah.
proactive. Yeah.
I'm not one that like loves to treat the pediatric population. I wouldn't really call it my niche, to be
Hmm.
honest.
Yeah.
But I see the value and I educate my parents that I do see. I'm like, bring your child to a
Hmm.
pediatric chiropractor, start nurturing these
Yeah.
healthy habits, go for walks, let them play. Parks are amazing. Like, bring your child to a park. It's designed to help them with grip strength, climbing, going down, tumbling, falling, getting back up. That helps with vertigo later on. That helps
Wow.
build your muscle armor. Like,
Yeah.
roll down a hill with your kids, like
Yeah.
do these things because that will only set them up to be better adults, better humans.
Right.
But honestly, we don't have time to do that
It's
as
so
parents.
true. Yeah.
And nowadays, especially I know back in the day, my mom really was the stay-at-home mom. Her
Hmm.
job was to take care of the family, but
Yeah.
now that's very rare to
It
find.
is.
You need
Yeah.
dual income. You need both parents working to sustain, but okay, what are we doing outside of work? Let's
Right.
get that energy back. Let's get you healthy so you can make your family healthy.
Exactly. Yeah. And like you said,
Yeah.
it only takes 20 minutes a day, let's say. So
Minimum.
we
Yeah.
and we think like when we get overwhelmed, we think that we don't have time. But
Yeah.
if we think about it, we do our to-do list, make our to-do list, really do that time management exercise,
Yes.
we find that yeah, we do have time. That happens
We
to me a lot
do.
where I'll wake up and I'll have, a million things to do and
Yeah.
I'll feel like I can't do it all. And then as I just tackle one at a time, it's like, oh yeah, I do have time. Like, and I have extra time. I can go for a
Yeah.
walk. So I think it's our thought process too that, really prevents us from. from doing all these things. Yeah.
It's your left brain making up a story that you don't have
Right.
time.
Right.
And I recently heard something from a very famous real estate agent in New York, Ryan Serhant.
Mhm.
We all have 1,440 minutes in a day.
Yes.
So you have time. You do. And I personally love, like, I have my agenda here with me and
Yes.
I write everything, even to like walk my dog. Like everything is in there because
Yes.
that dopamine hit that I get when I cross it out and
Mhm.
then just seeing it in front of me, like, wait, I can fit that into my day. I don't need to spend hours just sitting here in paralysis analysis behavior.
Right. Yes,
So,
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah. I remember talking to my grandmother and she was complaining that I didn't go visit her. And I came up with all these,
Mhm.
excuses. I have the kids, I work, and, I have the house to take care of. And she gave me an earful. She said, you make time for what you want to make time for.
A hundred
She said,
percent.
so don't give me any excuses.
Yeah,
If you want to come and visit me, you'll make the time to come and visit me. So
it's so
so true.
true.
Yeah, yeah, and
It's
that's
so
stuck
true.
with me. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about genetics then, because you mentioned
Yes.
your genetic makeup, and how do you know that?
Yeah. I found a course that I took. It's the Integrative Healing Academy. And I just have always had such a fascination with the human body, but I think it also came from me not being able to figure out my own ailments in life. I feel like every health practitioner kind of starts with guinea pigging
Right?
themselves
Yes.
first. And then they're like, I can help other people. I figured it out.
Yeah.
But I still didn't understand what was going on. I went through a lot of ups and downs with my health until maybe I want to say a few years ago. And when I found this program and when I learned about the genetics,
Mhm.
it all made sense. It's your genetics are your DNA, your blueprint. And although we are all made up of, you could say, very similar genes, there are the same genes in you and I
Mhm.
that are expressed differently. So I could have a mutation in a specific gene, but you don't have that mutation.
Mhm.
And that can affect the way that we take our supplements and even the foods that we eat. And so once I did my genetics panel, I then, put it together with the blood work, with the metabolism test. It's called the organic acids test.
Mhm.
And looking at all three of those tests in a more comprehensive way allowed me to really see how my body can handle supplements, handle nutrients, what's the bacterial overgrowth.
Mhm.
But going to the genetics itself a little bit more specifically, there are so many supplements on the market.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
a lot of people, including myself, when I went to a natural food store, I'd be like, oh, I'm going to try this month. Oh, that didn't work for me. I'm going to go to the next
Yeah.
brand. Or it's
That's
very
me.
trial and yeah, it's very trial and error.
Mhm.
And it's a very expensive.
It is. Oh
And
my gosh, I
oh
know.
my God, I was spending like $600 each time that I
Yeah.
went to the natural health store. And my mom's like, what, but like,
I
are
know.
you feeling better? I'm like, I don't know. It was so confusing.
Yeah.
And I actually realized once I did my genetics and I looked at what's happening, I've been taking all the wrong supplements.
Wow.
Yeah.
That,
So there's a very popular gene. I don't know if you've heard of it or if some of your listeners have heard of it, but
mhm.
it's called the MTHFR gene.
No, I haven't.
It's this gene that you could say it's the master controller of a process in our body called methylation. And methylation is a biochemical process that helps with DNA synthesis,
Mhm.
protein regeneration. It helps with enzymatic processes in the body. It's kind of an elimination pathway as well. There's a lot happening. And this MTHFR gene kind of controls that process.
Mhm.
And if you have a mutation in that gene, it affects the way this process works. And then it can lead to a cascade effects of having these weird symptoms in the body that
Wow.
are like fatigue, lethargy, bloating, brain fog. It's not that you're not more present or you're not
Mhm.
present enough or you're not eating the right foods, is that this pathway is not functioning.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And
Okay.
so it's not just that gene, though, that I look at, because a lot
Mhm.
of practitioners will solely look at that one.
Mhm.
I also look at other genes in that pathway, like CBS, BHMT, MTR. All these other genes can also tell us, is there a mutation?
Mhm.
And so I actually have a mutation in MTHFR, but
Okay.
also in another gene called CBS. And so what that means is because of this mutation, I produce more neurotoxic ammonia in my body.
Hmm.
And neurotoxic ammonia can present as having an odor. So sometimes you might have this like really sour, you think it's body odor, but it's
Yeah.
not.
Oh.
That's ammonia. It could also present in brain fog, GI upset, even vaginal issues as well, like dryness or
Hmm.
irritation there. So it could be very widespread throughout the whole body, this ammonia. And
Wow.
eating foods with sulfur, like eggs, Brussels sprouts,
Yeah.
onions,
It
a
just,
lot of foods that I love to eat that are
right.
healthy, they perpetuate this ammonia buildup
Wow.
because of this mutation.
Right.
So, with my functional health clients, we look at all of these mutations to see, do we have to fix a pathway? And it
Hmm.
does involve letting go temporarily of some of the foods that we love because we have to stop that neurotoxic ammonia from building up in the body. So that's just one of the examples that of
Okay.
one of the genes that we go through, but
Mhm.
very in depth and very much answering the problems to a lot of the questions that we have regarding our health.
Yeah, that's amazing. Because I mean, I always think, okay, if I'm bloated, I ate something that I shouldn't have eaten,
Yeah.
or, and then even with the supplements, I know, one person says to me, asked me, like, but if you don't need it, why are you taking it? And it's like, well,
Yeah.
I think I need it. I don't know. So I'm kind of going blindly, right, with my supplements.
Yeah.
But like you, I try all these different things. So what does does a testing work? The
Yeah.
genetic
So
testing.
with all of my clients in functional health, there's three stages we could go through, but the first stage is the foundation stage. So we're looking at nutrition, we're looking at genetics. I usually order from ancestry.com. This has the most complete genetic profile,
Mhm.
as well as it's one of the most protected genetic sites out there as well. Because a
Okay.
lot of people get a little, iffy,
Yes.
like, I
Yeah.
don't know, I don't want them having my DNA.
I
I
know.
totally get it, but
Yeah.
Ancestry is very safe. And so I
Okay.
really love working with them. And then we do blood work through your medical doctor or naturopath. And
Mhm.
then we also do the organic acids test, which I order from a company and just send it to my clients.
Okay.
So those would be the three tests that we're starting out with when it comes to the foundations.
Okay.
The second stage is the Dutch test because we're looking at sex hormones as well as cortisol. And
Mhm.
that's a dry urine test of comprehensive hormones. So it's not like a blood work analysis where you're
Mhm.
just taking blood and looking at the levels in the blood. We're actually looking at it as an elimination process and how we're
Okay.
metabolizing these hormones.
Got it.
Yeah. And then the final step is gut work. And that's where everyone wants to go. But
Mhm.
honestly, it's the most stressful. And that's why
Is
we set
it?
up it is. Yeah, you are filled with bacteria and protozoa and parasites and you
Yeah.
need to be because when we pass away and when we leave the earth, we have to decompose our body somehow. So
Mhm.
all of these organisms still within us are doing that. But
Wow.
we don't want to decompose when we're still alive, right?
Yeah.
So we need to do some elimination process and
Mhm.
you're going to disturb a lot of these bacteria, a lot of these parasites and protozoa. So we have to make sure foundationally you are at a good place so
Okay.
when we do disturb the gut and when we are doing the gut work, we can handle it and we're not going to be like, okay, yeah, I'm out and we've
Yeah.
done nothing, right?
So what can you describe, like, what somebody goes through in that process?
In gut work,
Yeah.
yeah. It can be a roller coaster, I'll tell
Oh.
you that. So we start off with a parasite and protozoa test.
Mhm.
And basically, we do that test to see what is living inside of you in excess. Because honestly, you're going to see things living inside of you. It's inevitable. But what is possibly taking over? Because again, when you
Right.
have parasites, when you have protozoa in the body, that can also be a form of bloating, sugar cravings, or craving specific types of food because they
Mhm.
want to eat too. And they eat what you
Right.
eat. And so they'll
Wow.
tell you what they want, and it's usually sugar.
Right.
So we see these values and we see either too high or they're good, they're normal.
Yeah.
And there is a parasite cleanse that I get my clients to do. And again, we have to be very careful because there could be some, things that come up that, they're either having diarrhea or constipation. So there could be changes in the way that their body's eliminating. So
Mhm.
working with a practitioner is something I highly recommend as opposed to just doing it on your own.
Right.
But essentially, once we flush that out, we do a GI map. And again, the GI map is telling us now even about bacteria. So a really popular one is H. pylori. And
Yes.
it's a very transmittable bacteria,
Mhm.
unfortunately. So it's being quite strict with this, but then naturally trying to eliminate because I did have H. pylori. I went on
So did
quadruple
I.
Yeah, I went on
Yeah.
quadruple antibiotic therapy for
Yeah.
2 weeks before I entered functional world. And
Yeah.
oh my God, I was burnt. I was drained. I had no energy. And I'm like trying to be with my patients. It was awful.
Yeah, it is
Oh,
awful.
it is.
And what
Yes.
that the antibiotics do to you
Oh,
anyways.
they just ruin your liver. Honestly, your
Yeah.
liver is your second largest organ in the body. And it's not just there for detox, it's helping with immune function to a certain degree. It's helping with blood cells, it's helping with circulation. Like
Mm,
there's so much happening in your liver. So
yeah.
taking an antibiotic, if you can do something natural, I usually recommend it, but I always say to talk to your medical
Of
practitioner or your
course.
health
Yeah.
practitioner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because
Yeah.
sometimes you need that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they'll need that. So how long is this functional healing process, or is it, like, can someone, how long, yeah, how long does somebody need to take to do it?
I have, excuse me, my program that I put my clients on to choose from is 3 months long as a
Okay.
minimum.
Okay.
Because the research does indicate that 3 months of doing something consistently will bring about change. We
Hmm.
call it chronic in the science world, if any of us have heard that with like chronic illness.
Hmm.
So that 3 month mark is usually the time that it takes for those new neurological habits to just even start to form. But
Right.
we can make something chronically good. Doesn't always have to be chronically bad.
Yeah.
So I usually work with my clients for a minimum of 3 months, and that usually just gets us into foundations and maybe the start of hormones.
Hmm.
But some people are really good, and we can then go another couple months, maybe 6 months, or sometimes even up to a year working
Hmm.
on the rest of it.
Right.
So I can't give an exact timeline because everyone's so different, but I usually start with a minimum of 3 months.
Okay. And then
Yeah.
at the end of, or during that period, then you can get a better sense of what is needed in terms of supplements and yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Like honestly, a lot of protocols that we start off with in foundations, it can be a little heavy. Like I know for me, it was like 15 to 17 supplements. Like it can be a lot, but
Yeah.
you also have to build up. So that's what a lot of our time is spent on too, because everyone's like, "Oh, I'm just going to take these." But
Hmm.
it's not candy. We have to remember that. Like for
Right.
myself, when I started my supplements, I was having migraines galore. I was even putting
Hmm.
acupuncture needles in my head
Wow. Yeah.
because I'm just like, what's going on? And then I'm like, oh, I'm taking my supplements. So there is like a weaning in process. So
Right.
it takes time. We start at low dosages and we
Yeah.
implement kind of one as we go.
Hmm.
So there's a process, but I can't say with rigidity that it's the same for everyone because it's different.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's very interesting actually. And I'm sure that it does improve the health of the brain as well, this
of course.
functional healing. So can you talk a
Yeah.
little bit about that and how the brain is affected?
Yep. So in foundations, I usually tell my patients or my clients, we're balancing your brain first. And then it also helps to balance your metabolism and to help balance things to a nice, foundations level. But one of the things I look at is I look at the neurotransmitters and how they're being metabolized. And a neurotransmitter is a chemical of your nervous system that elicits a message or it elicits a reaction. And a really popular one is dopamine. I'm
Yes.
sure we've all heard of
Yeah.
dopamine. It's that like pleasure chemical, and it's a very it makes us highly addictive to things.
Mm.
So we're balancing dopamine. We're also balancing serotonin as well. And then again, looking at your genetics, we can see, okay, can you handle glycine? Because glycine is actually an excitatory, or glutamate is an excitatory
Mm.
neurotransmitter.
Okay.
So can you handle it or not? Are you too excitatory? Do you need to be more inhibitory? So we are looking at neurotransmitter balance in that
Mhm.
foundations protocol.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow, sounds great.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's amazing how, when we do have all these cravings, we think that like it's all coming from the brain, right? Like
Yeah.
everything that we do comes from the brain.
Yeah, from the brain, or even I actually say we have three brains in the body.
Oh
You
God.
have your mind brain, where
Yeah.
everything is very like logical and thought through, your subconscious and your conscious mind. But we
Hmm.
also have our heart brain, and that's where we tend to store a lot of pain and a lot of sadness gets stored
Yeah.
in the heart, but a lot
Yeah.
of joy and happiness can also come there. And
Yeah.
then the third brain is your gut brain. So you got to clean out these three brains, and it's not going
Right.
to just happen. It's a lot of, again, that's why my three pillars are physical, chemical, and emotional, because
Hmm.
you have to look at that whole entirety of the body as opposed to just one pillar over another.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah.
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 Yeah. So what are some of the ways that we can support the brain again,
Mhm.
through your different pillars, and physical, chemical, and emotional.
Yeah.
Um,
So with physical, let's start there. Because if you
mhm.
were to imagine the three pillars, imagine it like a triangle.
Yeah.
So the bottom is physical because really no one wants to be in pain. Everyone needs to move to some degree, right?
Mhm.
Either out of bed or going for a walk or to work. So I usually start with let's just go with exercise to begin with. And
Mhm.
let's focus on your flexibility, your stability, and your strength. Because really, when you think about movement, you need to be able to stand on your tippy toes to reach for something or
Yes.
bend down to pick something up. That's flexibility.
Hmm.
But you also need stability because when you're doing those things, you don't want to just fall over.
Right. Yeah.
And then you need the strength to lift up that object or grasp that can of beans or whatever you're getting from up
Right.
top, right?
Yeah.
So those are my three pillars within the pillar. So it's
Yeah.
flexibility, stability, and strength. Yeah. And again, going to exercise at the gym, starting with some machines or even just walking. When
Hmm.
you think about it, walking is the voluntary act of trying not to fall. And you're
Right.
doing all three of those things
Yeah.
in that one movement. So go for a 20-minute walk outside,
Hmm.
go on the treadmill, go with a friend, make walking fun because it's
Hmm.
doing a lot for the brain. So that would be my first pillar with physical, as well
Okay.
as going to get a chiropractic adjustment. That would
Mhm.
also be in there.
Right. Yeah.
The chemical pillar, it's mainly about food and supplementation. And I usually work with my clients through that functional health aspect. But if you want to do things on your own and you want to just start cleaning up the diet, I usually recommend 90% of your diet should be whole food. But I truly believe in the 80-20 model.
Right.
80% of clean eating, enjoying what you're doing and being healthy, but 20% can be like those naughty foods that you like that little piece of cake, that sugar
Right.
cookie. And I really encourage a little treat every day
Hmm.
because even from my own experience, when I've been super clean with my eating, and then I'm like, okay, I feel so good. Ooh, there's a donut.
Exactly.
I
Yeah.
will cycle back into and I will feel so much worse the next week. And I'm like, but what happened? I was so good last week. So
Right.
I
And then you're
really
hard on
encourage.
yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. And then you get
Yeah.
hard on yourself. Your left brain is like, yeah, you suck. You're not good
Yeah.
at this. What?
Exactly.
You should
Yeah.
be fat. No, no, like turn that off. Like
Hmm.
just have little treats throughout the day so
Right.
you can still nurture that craving,
Hmm.
but you're not going to go off the deep end and just start indulging in all of this sugar food in order to feel
Right.
like you're rewarding yourself,
Yeah,
right?
because that's typically what happens, right? When we deprive ourselves of something and then we will,
Yeah,
we'll break down and then we'll binge, and that's not good. So,
100%.
yeah.
And it messes up with your psyche too, right? Because then again, like we said, that left
Right.
brain starts to get too noisy. And
Yeah.
then you're like, yeah, I give up. I'm not good enough. I'm not
Right.
this, I'm not that, right?
Yeah,
So
you
I
feel
usually
horrible.
say that 80-20, but try to have that 90% whole food every single day
Hmm.
for the moderation. And again, that little bit of your day could be like a little cookie or something. But
Right.
also when it comes to chemical, the environmental hazards too, like are you smoking? Are you drinking? What kind
Yeah.
of household products are you
Yes.
using?
Yeah.
Like these can all be hormone disruptors as
Hmm.
well. And the perfumes of a lot of these things, like I know when we spray Windex or when I go to my in-laws and
Hmm.
Windex is a common
Yeah.
it's a common cleaning agent there. And it's fine, like that's what they use, but I get so nauseated by the smell. I'm like, oh, I can't stand it. So
Yeah.
trying to switch over your cleaning products to being more healthy and there's so many cleaning agents now on the market
Yeah,
for
and you
that.
were talking about beliefs earlier, and that's what
Mhm.
it is. If it doesn't smell good, it's not clean. Like I
Yeah,
mean, I grew up with the pine sols and the bleach
yeah,
and the,
yeah,
and those are really, really harsh smelling chemicals. But
yeah.
it just smelled so wonderful, when my
I
mom
know. I love Pine
clean
Sol.
bleach or my mother-in-law, yeah. You know, and so it's
Yeah,
it's that belief of, yes, my house is still clean, even if I
yeah.
don't, use bleach everywhere.
100%. And I love using essential oils. I
Yes,
find I love tangerine or anything citrus because it gives me that like energy boost that I
yes,
need. So
yes.
if you're not smelling things, but you've just cleaned the house, put an essential oil out. I'm not a fan of candles
Absolutely.
because there's a lot of like fragrance agents in there,
Yeah.
but an essential oil, like you can't go wrong and they smell
Absolutely.
beautiful.
Yeah. You
Yeah.
just have to be careful because, my daughter has a cat, and so I can't have anything
Okay.
citrusy around the cat, and I have to
Okay.
really be careful. So I really miss my essential oil.
I know I would miss them too. If I couldn't, I'd be like, I
Yeah.
really want them. You always want what you
Yeah.
can't have, right? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But that
Yeah.
would be the chemical pillar. And then finally, the emotional pillar.
Mhm.
And this is, I would say, the most difficult pillar to master because we're constantly evolving. We're constantly changing as humans. Like,
Yeah.
I just had a huge change a couple weeks ago with myself. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, I would never think that I would be that person. So it's really interesting to see the evolution of
Yeah.
you,
Yeah.
but doing the meditation, seeking that clarity, talking to yourself with
Mhm.
positive and beautiful words is huge. Like you wouldn't talk to your best friend in a very demeaning way. Why
Right.
are we talking to ourselves like that? And
Yeah.
it's just all of those things that we know we should do, but we have to really do every single day, just little by little, like we said with the meditations, breath work, journaling, things like that.
Yeah, yeah, because
Yeah.
we have a lot. I mean, the older we get, the more baggage we'll get, the more emotional trauma we'll have. And,
Yeah.
dealing with that emotional trauma, how do you, accept what's happened in the past and, just go on?
Yeah.
And yeah, that is one of the hardest things because, we don't want to admit it as well. And depending on our culture as well,
Yeah.
we were taught that no, you have to keep things bottled up, but that only
Yeah.
hurts ourselves in the end. And
Yeah. Yeah. I
yeah.
think one thing for me is forgiveness. Just having that forgiveness to all the
Mm.
people that have like done you wrong.
Yes,
It's huge to just understand that, everyone's going through something in their life.
yeah.
Don't let your left brain make up that story. And if something does really, ruffle your feathers or spin you the wrong way,
Hmm.
just again, try to have a more loving attitude, forgiving attitude toward them because again, it could just be that they're projecting onto
Yeah,
you
right.
and they don't even know, they don't have that emotional intelligence to know that, but just and you
Yeah,
have that
yeah.
emotional intelligence, so you choose to be the better person and to forgive.
Yeah, and to have the compassion because like,
Absolutely.
at the end of it all, we're all the same. We all want the same things. And you're right.
Yeah.
They're coming at it from their situation. Not,
Yeah.
you shouldn't take it personally. It's not an attack
Yeah.
on you. It's what they're going through. And yeah, and
Absolutely.
I think that's one of the hardest things to realize and to accept and
Hmm.
to do because a lot of the times it's our ego, right?
There
That's
you go.
look at what they did to you and you're gonna let them do that,
Yeah.
and so it's that constant battle that we have within
Yeah.
ourselves. Yeah.
Yeah. Michael Singer says it really, really beautifully in his book, The Untethered Soul.
Hmm.
He says, your ego is like this beautiful cage that you reside in. And you can decorate that cage as much as you want. You can put beautiful flowers and furniture in there. But as
Hmm.
soon as there's a belief or something that comes in and rattles that cage, that's when we don't like that. And we
Right.
want to stay in our comfort zone. Our ego loves to be comfortable. And you
Yes.
just want to
Yeah.
stay in that cage pretty much your whole life. But
Hmm.
sometimes you rattle the cage, you got to get out, you have to see what's going on. And you're like, oh, it's actually kind of nice out here. Oh,
Right.
wow, I can do this differently. And
Yeah.
it's so scary, like that unknown. And especially even when it comes to forgiveness or when it comes to being
Yeah.
that bigger person, it's scary
It
because you're
is
just like,
scary.
but they're not going to change. But that's okay. You can't change other people. You can only change yourself.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right.
You can
Yeah.
control your reactions, not other people's
Exactly.
reactions. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Is there anything else you want to add to our talk about the left and right brain or any of the topics that we covered?
Yeah, just for not for anything, but when you have a balanced body, when you have a balanced brain, you also have balanced relationships. And I like to focus on businesses because,
Mhm.
being an entrepreneur, I find that you are wearing so many hats
Yes.
and you have to have balance. And it's hard because what you will constantly feel like you're jumping on the scale from left to right, trying to keep it balanced.
Mhm.
But I think that when you really take care of your body and your brain, everything else will start to fall into place and it won't feel like such a struggle. And I work with my clients in my program doing that, in
Mhm.
balancing their business too, because you need clarity. You need to have those energetic, creative flow going through
Mhm.
your body so you can continue to love what you're doing. But it all starts from up here, and you need to have that healthy, balanced brain.
Right. And we want to do it, in our later years as well. We want to keep going
Yeah.
well into
Yeah.
our 90s. And I think people are living longer these days. And,
Yeah.
it's, why not, right? You want to live a life where you have vitality, where you have balance, where you have mobility, and you can
Yeah.
enjoy, your life in a healthy way. But I love the way
Yeah.
that, you are helping women in businesses and having that balance, because you're right. As an entrepreneur, we're everything. We are our marketer,
Everything.
our creator, our poster, everything. Yeah.
Yeah. And you can keep taking courses like I have.
Yeah. Me
Every
too. Yeah.
course, and your brain's like, you're not good enough to do your own thing yet. You need to take more courses. But for the amount of money that I spent in an extra tuition of taking all these courses, I'm
Mhm.
just like, I know what I have to do. I know my message is to help other people do
Yes.
that. But I just have to shut my left brain up a little bit and turn my right brain on a little bit more. And I even told myself when I started embarking on this journey of helping
Mhm.
people, helping their businesses, I'm like, I'm going to just surrender this to the universe or to God or whoever is your higher power,
Yes.
and I'm going to let them lead me in this. And I'm so excited to work with so many more people and help so many more people because again, like everyone just wants to be happy and healthy, and age
Yes.
is just a number. You are not 90 and you have to be 90. You could be
Mhm.
20 in your mind forever.
Right. Yeah.
And sometimes you need guidance in doing that. And sometimes you need a little push in that direction, right? So,
Absolutely. Yeah, because
yeah,
you don't know what you don't know, and there's so
100%.
much out there. So how do you
Yeah,
hone in and, do what's really important and do what works for you, because we're all different. So what
yep,
works for you might not work for me and vice versa. So it's
exactly.
finding that tool, that strategy that is going to help you live,
Yeah.
your healthiest life. Yeah.
Yeah, it's all about authenticity at the end of the day.
Mhm.
My first business was teaching swimming in my backyard.
Yeah, I
And
remember. Yeah.
and I would drive around my neighborhood and I would see posters, swimming lessons, call this number. And I'm like, oh, that's cool. There's other swimming companies. I was stacked. I had so many people. I even had one of my clients get referred to me, although she was already seeing me as a
Uh-huh.
client from another person I didn't even know. Right. And it was just so interesting to see how abundant that business was. And I
Yes.
had a lot of, detachment to it and that I just was attracting. But the thing is there's so many people doing what you're doing already, but no one
Yes.
will do it the way you do it. And I
Exactly.
think we
Yeah.
have to just remember that there's only one version of you.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's so many, how many people are there out there? And you're
How many
right. Like,
chiropractors are there out there? How many
yeah,
meditators are there?
exactly.
Like
But
there's
you
so
know what? It
many.
doesn't matter, because I feel
No.
too what I'm putting out there is so important, and
Yeah.
it's helping me. It has
Yeah.
helped me. I mean, my journey began, I think, in my 20s, and I was going to any and every, assertiveness training webinar, and because I didn't feel like I was good enough. But
Yeah.
then, you get to a point where you think, yes, I am good enough, and
Yeah.
now I'm going to start spreading the word, and,
Yeah.
I just, yeah, making myself healthy, because at the end of the
Yeah.
day, for me, like that's the number one, is to be healthy.
Yeah, you really have to love yourself. I truly believe
Yes.
that because if
Yeah,
you don't love yourself, who else is going to love you in that way,
exactly. Yeah.
right? You
Yeah.
can keep seeking external validation. You could work with all the clients in the world and they could tell you how great you are, but it won't mean anything to you if you don't believe it yourself, right?
That's
So
right.
I
Yeah.
think everything happens to everyone at a divine time and at a
It does.
preempted time.
Yeah.
It's definitely hard when you're just constantly trying to chase it. I'm
Yes.
like, you know what? I'm just attracting now. I'm just
Yeah.
going to let things come to me. And if that's the way that it's going to be, then that's it. I have no control.
No, and we
Yeah.
don't. And that's
No,
the thing, like we don't have control. But
no.
with the self-love, you're right. And you mentioned something about earlier on where, you talk to people nicer than you talk to yourself. And I
Yeah.
feel that, and we're all on this journey. I found self-love, but I'm constantly working at it because,
Yeah.
there are external factors that come into
Yeah.
into play, and then you question yourself all the time. But
Yeah.
as you have the tools, and that's the important thing, where you can bounce back. And so I found that with just incorporating self-love, just accepting me for who I am, my relationships are also better because
Yeah.
and it kind of like just spreads out that way.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. You will attract what you give. And if you
yeah,
are giving low vibration because you're not happy with yourself, that will come to you.
yeah,
So it's going to be icky in the beginning, but just stand in front of the mirror. Louise Hay calls it mirror work, and
yes,
just look at
yeah,
yourself dead in the eye and just say, like, I love you. And
yes,
it's going to be like, oh, at the
yeah.
beginning, but then you will believe it. And, you'll start singing it and dancing it around, and it will attract, it will bring in people that want to work with you and even more love to you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I agree with that for sure.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. Anything else in closing or
Honestly, I'm just so happy to be on the show. And thank you so much for
I
having me as a guest and getting to share my message.
yeah,
And yeah, if anyone has any questions for me, you can always reach me. I think Rose has the info down below,
yeah,
but I'm always
absolutely.
open to meeting new people.
Excellent. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Celia, for the wonderful conversation and information that you've shared with us. Because it really helps us, to make changes in our daily lives that will create that cognitive health and physical health and emotional health that I think we all want. Like I said, we
Yeah,
all want fundamentally, we all want the same thing. It's maintaining that cognitive health is such a crucial component of healthy aging, and we're all
for
aging.
sure. We are all
We're
aging
all
every day.
aging.
We're one
Yeah,
step a little bit more towards
yeah,
that end state than we were yesterday, but it
yeah.
can be a
But
beautiful process.
it is, yeah.
Yeah.
And so if the audience has any questions, yeah, or you want to share your own experiences, please comment below, and I will have all of your information, Dr. Celia, for our audience in the event that they want to contact you. It has been a real pleasure.
Oh, thank you so
And to
much.
you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you to the audience. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more wellness content. And we'll see you next time on The Balanced Path. Take care, everyone.
Bye.